Welcome to Impact the World, the show for and about creatives, changemakers, and entrepreneurs. This is a conversation episode where a special guest shares with me what they are creating and the behind-the-scenes journey of their experience. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Impact the World, where my special guest is Sabrina Soto. Sabrina is an interior designer, a television host, and you may have seen her on HGTV. She and I met about a year ago when we were both speakers at Mike Dooley's Solarpalooza event. And Sabrina really struck me when she was speaking on stage with her honesty, her openness about her own life and her own journey, and also her enthusiasm for manifestation and spirituality. So we got to talk in today's episode about her work as a designer and someone who helps people transform their homes, what her experiences have been on television, and we talk about Instagram and popular culture and how different it is to when we were younger, and also a little bit about parenting. So there are many great nuggets in this show, and it was lovely to get to hear and learn more about Sabrina. I hope you enjoy the show. All links, as usual, are underneath the show episode. And if you enjoy Impact the World, it helps us enormously if you rate, review, or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show. Sabrina, welcome to the show. Thank you for saying yes.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we met about a year ago when we were both speakers for Mike Dooley at his Solarpalooza. And I was just saying to you that we're recording this in November 2020. Feels like such a different world, like those times when we were all out gathering together and those kinds of big events.
I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm watching like a TV program or a movie and people aren't wearing masks, I'm like, wait, why aren't they wearing a mask? It's like, yeah. We're so used to it now.
Yeah, there's such a split between then and now. It's really profound.
I know.
But one of the things that struck me about you, because that was my first time meeting or knowing about you, and we're going to talk about your work in a minute, but one of the things that really came off the stage at that event when you were talking was your energy and your enthusiasm and your passion. And you were sharing some stories about tough times that you had gone through and how they had inspired you to kind of pick yourself up and do things in a new way. But the thing that, you really radiate is you have this big energy that really you could see everyone in the room was loving. Have you always had that, Sabrina? Is that, because it's a beautiful quality, and I'm always curious when I meet people with very big energy, is that something that was with you as a kid, or is that something you developed?
You'd have to ask my mother, but I think I've been a handful all of my life. Yeah, I remember being a young kid and making the entire family laugh at family gatherings with jokes or making funny faces. And I think since I was little, I've loved to be on stage and sort of performing, but I never thought in a million years I would really make a career out of it. So it's just, I find myself being very grateful every single day that I get to do what I do. And there have been times in my career, just on television alone, where there have been lulls. And I think when I first started, I did take it for granted. And when I had that lull of time where I really couldn't get a job, it brought me back to this humble space that I now will never forget that time. And every single day that I wake up and I'm on set or I'm being able to create or do a project, I really tackle it with gratitude. And I think that's what sustained me all of these years.
Yeah, that's your spiritual practice, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so what did you want to do when you were a kid? If you didn't envision what you're doing now, what were you thinking of? You know
what? I didn't know. And I wasn't like that child who said they wanted to be a teacher or a doctor. I didn't really know. I would have loved to be a news reporter. Thank goodness that didn't work out. I don't even watch the news anymore. But I just didn't know. I just always loved creating, and I loved to entertain. When I found my job on HGTV, it was such a fluke that I found it. I actually had watched the movie The Secret, and this was before The Secret was on Oprah. So I believe I paid like $4.95, and you had to watch it on the internet. And the next day I found my HGTV job. It was an ad on Craigslist, and it didn't say it was for HGTV, but really the day that I watched The Secret completely changed the way that I manifested everything in my life. But no, to say that I thought that when I was a child that I was going to be a designer on TV or, have my own line of products, never in a million years would I have thought that.
Right. And yet it's interesting, the seed of it came from your mom, right? In some ways, what your mom, you talk about how influential your mother's work was on what you do now.
Yeah, she was a party planner and a decorator, and we lived pretty comfortable until about I was 14 years old, and we lost everything. By the age of 17, we were homeless. And but my mom always told me, no matter how much or how little we had in our bank account, that we should always be proud of our home. And it didn't take money to have a clean and tidy home. So I've always really tackled every design project with that in mind. And I think that's why I do so well on my shows with budget design, because of my mom, and just being able to be really resourceful when you don't have any money to make things beautiful.
Yeah. And what was the homeless period of your life like? Like, how long did that last, and what did it look like?
So I think from the age of, for a good year or so, I would sleep on the bathroom floor of one bathroom in our house because we had no heat in the rest of the house. My mom would actually wake up early and turn on the oven just so we could stand around it to eat cereal. And then when I graduated high school, we were evicted from our home. So we were homeless, and we were lucky enough to have family on the East Coast take us in for a little while until we got back up on our feet.
That's great. And I mean, that kind of experience, I think really imprints you in a I imagine a very positive way, not just the gratitude, but also just that whole reality of our life, that things can change and move very suddenly. I think one of the amnesiac things that we often have is getting stuck in the program, the habit, the routine, forgetting that change is a constant and that anything can kind of 360 your world at any point.
And it's not even just that. I was listening today to Esther Hicks, one of her, sometimes when I'm working on a design program, I'll like turn on YouTube and listen to her workshops. And she said something so powerful. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. It was Wayne Dyer was saying it today. I was listening to his Ultimate series. And he was saying that when you're going on vacation, you know that you're going to leave and then experience, but then you'll come back. So then he's like, then if you know you're going to come back, then why don't you just say to yourself, I might as well just stay here. But the whole point is because of the adventure of leaving and changing. And I think we are always so stuck on, when I get the job, when I find my soulmate, when I make $1 million, I'll be happy, instead of really enjoying every single process until you get there. And so what you were saying, like that part of my life made me into who I am now. And when I start getting into a situation that is a struggle in my life now, instead of fighting it and instead of getting to that mindset, like when this passes, I'll be happier, I try to actually be present in the moment and realize that this is just part of the journey. You have to actually climb the mountain to get to the peak.
So true. And it's interesting too. I've recently been having to reminisce on some older photos and things of me and people I love in my life. And it kind of really hit me 2 days ago when I was having to go through this process. Wow, in those moments, we were so different in our perspective, in how we looked, and our world. And the one thing that it just reminded me is it's all changing. Like who you and I are today and where we are today, 3-4 years from now, may or may not be relevant, may have completely disappeared. And I mean, I think we've gone through that as a world this year because of the whole coronavirus experience, for sure.
Well, not just coronavirus. I mean, everything. And, people are saying like 2020 is the year that broke me or whatever. I don't think that. I feel like this was the year where everything came to a head. And I don't know about you, but I've changed more this year than I have in the last 5.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been waiting for this for so long. I have definitely changed, but in a weird way, I kind of feel like I've kind of felt that this was going to happen at some point in some way. I never thought it would look like coronavirus. But I think just because of channeling for so long and hearing messages for so long and timelines predicted, this 2020 to 2024 period has for a long time been a kind of 4 years that has been talked about as this major 360 on the planet. And so,
Wait a minute, Lee, are you trying to tell me this is going to last for 4 years?
no, nothing lasts for 4 years. Everything disappears, but we're definitely in a kind of major change cycle. And so in a way, if this is how we kicked it off, you kind of think, okay. So yeah, this is a and it's not just stuff that I've channeled. I've heard this from other people too, that this is kind of an axis point of transformation. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because there are so many things that we're facing as a world that are not yet collectively being addressed, that it's now we have to kind of collectively address those things or not. So I think that's why these times are so intense. But yeah, for sure, the coronavirus has unified people. Whatever you think about the virus itself, we've all gone through this very unified experience this year in a way that I've not seen in my lifetime.
No, I don't think, and I hope that we're not going to see it again.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what else we're going to see. I'm sure there are some more colorful things to come, but I think the key is kind of what you talked about. And I think what we're really talking about, one of the things I live by is nothing is promised. Life is not promised. And, I think when we have loved ones, especially loved ones who aren't necessarily elderly or sick, suddenly disappear off the planet, it really makes you realize, oh, wow, anytime anything can change. So being grateful, being open, being aware, and I think being who you're here to be are the kind of ways that we can enjoy and hold ourselves together in all of this, which is why I wanted to talk to you.
But I'm sorry to cut you off, but like being, what you just said made me think about something. Being who you're meant to be. Don't you find with all of the clients and the people that you connect with that people have a hard time finding who they really are and what their purpose is?
Yeah, it depends who I'm working with. It's interesting. I haven't met a massive amount of people who struggle with their purpose, and I'm sure that's because we're all offering different things to each other. I tend to meet a lot more people who have their purpose in place, but they either want courage around it, or those tend to be the areas I work a bit more. But I do have other friends who help people find purpose. But I think that's because our purpose is so off collectively. If you look at what the world we were born into and what we were told is, this is happiness, exactly what you said. When you get married, when you get a house, all these kind of end goals that everybody gets to if they get to those things. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I'm glad I got this, but this hasn't actually completely transformed my life. And then you really have to dig deep and go beyond the exterior.
That is just a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
And I had a meditation, a really, really deep meditation recently, where I was being kind of downloaded with information of how there's so much beauty in the world. There's like purple and pink sunsets and rolling hills and the ocean and these beautiful flowers. And we're like, no, I want to buy a watch. It's like, what? It is insane sometimes when we get so off track that we focus on the wrong things instead of focusing on love, family, friends, health, and the beauty that's surrounding us in every single moment.
Yeah. And I love that you bring that in, because one of the things I was thinking about coming to talk to you today is, one of the spiritual principles that I have had drummed into me, both from my own channel and other learnings I've gathered over the years, is the importance of beauty and the importance of harmony. And so here you are as someone who sees, honors, and helps create beauty for others. So has that always been a sense of yours, this ability to not only see the beauty, but also to help others create it?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a passion of mine to transform spaces, but it's very strange the way that I see things. Organization is one of my specialties in what I do. And when I see bookcases or drawers or a closet, I actually see it and my mind computes it sort of like a puzzle. So it's sort of fun for me, and it's easy for me to move things around where a lot of other people find it really difficult to wrap their heads around it. And I notice a lot of my clients don't think that they have the capacity to be creative, but everyone does. I think it's just that we second guess ourselves all the time, and we just feel like we don't have it. But every single person on this earth has the capacity to be just as creative as I am.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, like one of the questions I had for you is, you have, I'm going to read something from your bio, or one of the bios that I found for you. And you say, it is my belief that any space you live in can and should be a representation of who you are, regardless of budget. Each of us have a unique personality and set of experiences, and our spaces should reflect that. Embracing who we are and where we come from is the only way we can truly begin to design for ourselves.
That is right.
I mean, I love that. And I was going to say to you, for anyone listening or watching, what is the easiest change that we can make in our homes? Is there like an obvious thing that those of us who don't think that way just miss? And it's the thing that you go into everyone's house and you're like, if they just knew to do this, are there any obvious things that we could, apply right now?
It's actually something spiritual, and it doesn't seem like it is, but once you actually do it, it can completely transform your life, is decluttering, letting go of the things that you no longer need. And it's so symbolic of your life. I'm a huge fan of Tosha Silver, and in her book, It's Not Your Money, she talks about this and the success stories that come through just letting go of clothes, tchotchkes, books, magazines. It really opens up energy in your life and in your home. You'd be surprised how many clients of mine just doing that, not even spending $1 and even making sometimes money, because if you sell the things you no longer need, really just free up their space, like mentally and physically.
What is it that you experience people saying is their big resistance to that? Because you must have had to walk people through that process. What are some of the classics that stop us from doing that in your experience?
I might need it one day.
Or
so-and-so gave that to me, or I don't want to be without it. But isn't that the true in the case of everything in our life that we don't want to let go of? Even sometimes people.
Yeah. It is interesting. We're moving house in about 2 weeks. So we've been doing a lot of box clearing and a lot of, whoa, what's this thing here? We've lived there for just over 4 years, which is the longest I've lived anywhere in about 20 years. So it's been a very interesting process. We're pretty good, actually, I'm happy to say, but I credit Stephen with that because he's great at getting the clutter out.
Yeah. Moving is it's supposedly like the most stressful thing and people go through in their lives, but I find it also to be so cathartic because it's a refresh, it's a restart, and that's when you actually have to go through everything and figure out what you need and what you don't need anymore. And I think during COVID, more people have realized a lot of the things that we need, we actually don't. I mean, for me, I used to live in New York, and just for my work, I had to go to so many events. So I have like all these heels and dresses, and in COVID, I have nowhere to go with these heels and these dresses. I'm going to go to Trader Joe's with my Yves Saint Laurent heels. Like, no. Yeah. And I ended up giving most of them away. I don't want them anymore. That's not even my life anymore. And it's taught me really what we truly need in our lives. And it has nothing to do with material goods.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, your work again, and we're talking about like people and the attachments that we have to the things in our house. You work on these shows where you're helping people transform their home. And of course, we know that has a huge transformation on them as a person. That's why I think we love these transformation shows, which have become so popular in the last couple of decades. I'm curious, for those of us who haven't worked on a reality TV show, how much is the reality? Because I know that, a lot of it has to be kind of organized, or some of it is scripted, but with these transformation shows, you never get that feeling. You get the feeling that these things really are happening very live. So it must be very impactful for the people that you're, not at all. Maybe I've been watching some of the good ones.
I know. Well, the truth of the matter is, for the most part, a lot of the shows have behind the scenes help. And so when you watch these shows and it just looks like there's 3 people renovating this house, it's just not the case. There's a lot of people. We couldn't get it done in the time frame that we have to get it done. So in real life, where you have maybe a month to get a kitchen remodeled, we only have maybe a week or 2 weeks to get it done. So there is a lot more help, but there's also a million things that go wrong on the shows, on at least my shows, that are never shown on, after it's edited. So there's things that get broken, lost, stolen, who knows, fights. It's a little bit more dramatic behind the scenes at times than it looks like on these before and after shows.
Right. What is your favorite aspect of working with the people who you have on the shows, like their experience of this process?
The reveal, always. It's my favorite part, to be able to see their face when they see their own home looking completely different than they could ever imagine.
Yeah, I think that's the bit that everybody, that I've seen. I haven't seen a ton of these shows, but I've seen some of them, and that's always fascinating as well as a viewer, just to see what's possible. And I think the energy of transformation then is something that we're enjoying, whether we relate to the people it's happening to, or whether it's just for us to watch something turn around and become something different.
Yeah, we love a makeover.
Yeah. So one of the things that you started about a year ago, and you mentioned Tosha, who was one of your guests, is you have a podcast called Redesigning Life. And what I love about this is you have fused your passion for design and your passion for manifestation and transformation. So tell us a little bit about the show.
So, most people just know me as a designer on HGTV and other shows. And what most people don't know is spirituality and manifestation. New thought is such a huge part of my life. I'm so passionate about it. And I have so many people that I admire and so many things that I've learned and have really helped me in my own life. So I wanted to have an outlet where I could have these discussions. So I started the podcast, and I really just did it as a side passion project. And it became ultra successful. So I'm really excited about that. But I've been able to have so many amazing guests. Mike Dooley, who put together the Solopalooza. I just had Tosha Silver. I've had a lot of my designer friends. Bobby Burke, who's on Queer Eye, who's been a friend of mine for so many years. He has such an amazing backstory. So we don't really talk about design at all. We really talk about life and everybody else's struggles and how they've overcome their own obstacles in their life and how they've manifested things. So it's just a really fun conversation. And it's just so casual that you feel like you're kind of eavesdropping on a dinner party between, me and my guest.
That's great. And what are you noticing are kind of some of the themes that are coming up for people? Like, are there key themes? Because, for example, I noticed with this show, when I speak to people about what they're creating in the world and why you start to see patterns emerging. I'm curious what you're noticing with your guests.
I think what I'm noticing when I have these conversations, especially when it comes to manifesting, is that everything boils down to self-worth. And especially I'm noticing in my own life how that has played a part, whether or not I get things or I don't. And just being able to provide a service out of passion and not for the sole reason of, lining your pockets.
Yeah. So when did manifesting start for you? Because you mentioned The Secret, which I think came out in 2006 before it kind of exploded. So when did you start to get into all of this?
I want to say it was 2006 when I actually watched it. And that started, so my girlfriend kept saying to me, you have to watch The Secret. And The Secret, I'm like, time for The Secret. I don't even know what that is. And so I kept pushing it off, and I got done work early and I watched it, and I was in my office because I could only watch on my computer. And I was married at the time. My husband came home. I didn't have an agent, Lee. I didn't have any connections at all to HGTV, to anything. And he walked in the door and I said, I'm going to be on TV and I'm going to be doing something really fun and creative. And he said, have you been drinking? And I said, yes, but I'm still going to be on TV. And I'm still going to do this. And he kept trying to talk me out of it. He's like, we just got married. Why would you want to start auditioning? Why would you want to, you're making great money being a designer and working from your house. And I just knew it. I just had it in me. The next day, I couldn't sleep. I woke up and there was this listing on Craigslist. Again, I didn't know it was for HGTV. So I sent my stuff out, never heard anything. I started working out like a crazy person that day. Like I was training myself to be on TV. I had no leads. I had no reason to think that I was going to be. I had like, there was something in my soul that just knew that it was going to happen and nobody was going to talk me out of it. So I started eating a lot cleaner. I worked out every day. I started like looking for clothes that would look good on TV. And weeks later, I want to say it was at least a month later, I finally got a reply to that one email I sent the next morning. And that was my first HGTV show.
Rhonda Byrne, I'm telling you, she and that crew, they did something, didn't they?
I'm telling you, and then Mike Dooley and all of his books and all of the other teachers, Esther Hicks, Tosha, Gabby Bernstein, everybody in the Hay House community. Like I can't get enough of it. I think I posted about it on Instagram yesterday. My nightstand looks like I have a mini library because I can't get enough of this information. And it's just so obtainable and it's so simple, yet at times when I'm struggling, I realize that I just get off track. And it's just about constantly having to push myself back on those train tracks of, thinking positive, being in a place of gratitude, taking care of myself, setting boundaries. Oh, this is a big one that I've just realized. At my age, I just found out that I'm a people pleaser.
Oh, you just found that out?
I just found out.
Right. Good. Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's going to keep you busy for a while.
Oh, that's what's happening. Okay. That makes sense. But the truth of the matter is I've made my career on being a people pleaser. I have to, and being liked. And then I'm starting to realize like, how does that sort of saturate my real authentic life? And so it's sort of a balance now that I'm doing. And I'm telling you all this to be vulnerable and say like, you see me on TV and everybody thinks that my life's picture perfect and I'm still a work in progress and I'm still figuring stuff out. And it's okay. It's okay to be imperfect.
Which we all are, and we're all figuring it out. But I do think the illusion of television that we in our generation grew up especially programmed by, I think the younger generation seems, well, I would say both. On the one hand, I think things are a bit more real. And on the other hand, I think, the Instagram culture has made things more unreal. It's kind of a little bit of both, I think. But
yeah, it's actually, I'm scared for the generation because obviously we didn't have social media growing up, but the filters and all of these things, and it's not real and nobody can obtain that. And we're setting such high standards for ourselves and other people that I hope there's a shift. Just like COVID is creating a shift in a lot of other perspectives in our lives. I hope that there's something shifts that we can become more authentic and more real on these platforms.
Yeah, and I think what I'm heartened by, as I was a teenager who I think if I had more awareness, more tools, and more, let's put it this way, if the world was more emotionally communicative when I was a teenager, or emotional intelligence was out there in the world as a thing that we could learn, I would have done so much better. I would not have gone through all of the bumps and scrapes I went through for so many years because I was starving for that. So the one good thing about this time that I think balances what you're talking about from my perspective is I do see a huge upshift in awareness and personal transformation. And like you said, it's so much more accessible now. Like when I was a kid, you had to go to the bookstore and buy a book. And I mean, I was thrilled to, because that was all we had. But now it's like you can find what you want. So of course, like anything, some people are going to get lost down the rabbit hole of image until it spits them out, or until they crash, or until one of their friends plants a seed of, hey, you should read this book, or, who knows what will get them somewhere else. But I'm heartened that the other side is also a lot more prevalent. That's the one thing I do think that younger people have down, which I don't remember my youth being as colored by such aware conversations and honesty. And I do see authenticity that younger people are allowed to have that I don't remember being allowed to have when I was a teenager. You know, it just wasn't how people were talking.
I mean, no one even spoke of meditation when I was a kid. A sound bath? What? What? And yeah, you're right. Like, at least it's a little bit more obtainable now than it ever has been before. And I hope that this continues to go down that road.
Well, you're doing that thing that we all need to do, which is be the light you want to see in the world. So, for example, you've taken your passion around this topic and you've created this podcast to put these conversations out into the world. And I always think for me, I always think of myself as a worker bee. Like, I identify most as a creator. That's the one title that I would put above my head that I feel completely comfortable with. And as a worker bee, and I think we're all just worker bees in the hive, doing what we are compelled to do, bringing what we're compelled to bring. So I love that you've really brought that huge part of yourself forward in a way that's offering out to the world too. I think that's fantastic.
I mean, this is what I was saying, like, just being authentic to where your passion lies. And I did the podcast because I wanted to talk to these people. And so I'm just thrilled that everyone else is enjoying it and finding it entertainment and fulfilling as much as the conversations that I'm having myself are. So it's just been so fun.
So we will put links to the podcast underneath in all the show links, but just for anyone listening, just repeat the name and where we can find the podcast, please. That would be great.
It's Redesigning Life with Sabrina Soto, and you can find it on Spotify, iTunes, all the places that you could listen to podcasts. I don't even think there's one it's not on. Brilliant.
Great. And you mentioned the younger generation. I know you are a very dedicated mama to Olivia. So how are you finding parenting this year, especially? Like how, because I mean, I've had so many conversations with parent friends about how they've had to adapt and how their kids are adapting. How has it been for you guys this year?
You know, it's challenging for sure. I feel for parents who have kids in online school. Olivia started, and because she's in pre-K, she's 4, she was 4 years old watching an iPad for 4 hours. So because it's voluntary, I just pulled her out. It just didn't make sense. But I have a lot of friends who work full time at home and have their kids homeschooling. And it's just a lot of pressure. It really is. And so, I just feel like we don't have another choice, just like parenting. You just have to deal with it. So I'm trying my best to explain it to her. She just turned 5. I'm trying to explain coronavirus to her to not instill fear in her, and just teaching her how to meditate. Last night she was on Instagram stories pretending to teach other people how to meditate. But I'm trying to teach her the tools that I wish I had growing up. So it's been quite an interesting year, and I'm a single mom too. So I'm trying to do the best I can with the tools that I have in my back pocket.
Yeah. Well, one of the tools you definitely have is creativity. Like so I think if I was a very creative kid, so I think, wow, how cool to have Sabrina as a mom, because do you find that that's a place that you two can go to because that's one of your strengths? Yeah.
I love a craft. Yeah. I love a craft. I love drawing with her and playing and creating things. The only thing that she loves to do that I can't is play with worms, but I'm mustering up the courage. Still, I'm not there yet.
Right. Worms.
I can't. Honestly, I would rather hold 16 cockroaches and a spider than one worm. Oh, I don't know why. Don't ask.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. Does she have a worm farm then? Or is it just outside?
She just loves playing in dirt. Loves bugs.
Brilliant. And is she very how is she when she sees you on TV? Have you shown her like you on the TV and stuff? How does she put that together in her mind?
It's funny. Yesterday it was the first time we actually had a conversation, because we were talking about one of her friends' parents who's a firefighter. And I asked her what I did for a living, and she was like, you make things. You make rugs, you make things, you design things. And I'm like, you know that? But I don't think I think she thinks just because I'm on TV, it's the same thing as being on Instagram. Like, everybody's doing it.
Yeah,
I don't think she thinks it's special at all.
Right. Well, it's a screen as well. It's all, it's very different to when we were younger, where it literally was the TV and that's it. So I'm curious, with you infusing spirituality into her life? Like, does she, I mean, it's crazy because she's 4, but I feel compelled to ask these questions. Like, what does she talk about with what she would like to kind of express in the world? And I'm not talking about when she's older. Like, does she talk about that yet?
We have conversation. I try to talk to her about law of attraction, and I tell her that she has angels that are just assigned to her, so she could always talk to them about what she wants. And I'm still trying to get meditation to be part of her daily routine. But she speaks. I think she is very spiritual. She weirdly speaks a lot about my grandparents, who she only met once when she was 6 months old. But Lee, she talks about them at least 3 to 4 times a week, about how she loves them, how she misses them. Yeah. So I just sometimes look at her, I'm like, you're just like a little Buddha, and that they're born so intuitive, and just we chisel it out of them little by little as they get older. And I'm trying to just keep it locked inside of her. I don't want that to go away.
That's great. Well, yeah, because the further away we get from our baby state, the deeper we get into this 3D world, and the further away we potentially can get from the connected realms. So I'm not at all surprised she's talking about your grandparents, her grandparents regularly. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
I know, but then I take it a step. I'm like, do they talk to you? What do they say? And she's like, no.
Well, right.
Oh, okay, forget it.
Great. Well, it's interesting. You mentioned TV, and I was curious because I think, most of us grew up with television or film and the screen, but I do in the spiritual community, there are lots of varying opinions about television and the influence of television, negative and positive. And I think my kind of perspective on it is it really depends what you're putting out into the world and what you're watching. But I'm curious for you, as someone who didn't work in television, wanted to go into it, and now has gone into it, could you perhaps share like what's been like your high and your low in terms of what you thought working in television might be? Like, what has been the nice surprise, and what has perhaps been a challenge or a disappointment, if there are any?
I think connecting with people, especially in person, when people see me and the excitement and being able to shop to me in real life, it's just, I love being able to connect with people who watch these programs, and really educate people on how to make their lives a little bit more beautiful aesthetically in their homes, and give them really easy to digest tips in order to do that. I think the challenge has been, obviously, and I think, I don't care if you're on TV or if you're an accountant, it's just sometimes judgment and the negativity. I've been very lucky for the most part. I don't have to deal with it as much as somebody who's famous, but there always is, like, sometimes, and especially because of what I'm creating is personal, because it's my design. If it's criticized or I'm physically criticized, I would be lying to say that I've developed enough of a thick skin that it doesn't affect me. Yeah. But I try not to take it personally.
No, I think that's really well said, because it is tricky. I think part of what I've noticed, both with stuff that has perhaps come at me about me, like you, I'm very lucky. I haven't really had too much bad stuff, too many negative attacks or judgments. But I think, number one, you are a human being. Yeah. And I think there is this perception when we're watching someone on a TV show or on the Instagram page, or of who that person is. And I think one of the gifts for me of doing this job and meeting so many people off camera or off stage who perhaps are out there publicly is a lot of people are never quite what you expect them to be. So, there are certain people who I know I want to meet because of the way they come across. And I'm like, I think I'm going to really like that person just because of their energy. And it's true. But equally, there are other people who perhaps I don't necessarily warm to their work on camera or on stage, and then I'll meet them afterwards, and they're very different. They're very different off stage. So I think it's a tricky thing, because it's just this one, especially with television or Instagram, we're focusing one angle, one position, one perspective, and the way things are edited too can really influence people.
But I'm also not an actress. I'm playing myself on TV. I'm not trying to be another character. So for the most part, what you see on camera is what you get in person. The only thing in person that's going to be different on camera is that I curse way more than I do on TV. So just watch out. I am a truck driver.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And I'm curious what your family and friends experience about your work in the world and you being out there and accessible to them through the TV and everything. Do they enjoy it? Is it something they enjoy?
They couldn't care less. They could not care less. My mom actually gets annoyed if anybody comes up to me in person. She'll, because she was like, now I have to make conversation. I'm like, no, Mom, you don't have to do anything.
That's great.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think my parents are obviously proud of me and my sister's proud of me, but they're not impressed by me by any means. And they will remind me any chance they can.
That's brilliant. Yeah. That's
they're like, pipe down.
Is your mom proud of her influence though? Because, you know, in a way, some of what you got modeled through her, it's what you're doing now.
And she still helps me. I mean, she'll still give me her 2 cents if I'm designing something. And sometimes like she'll actually help me on a project if she's here spending the weekend with us. So she still is my creative force.
Great. And I have one final question for you, Sabrina. It's perhaps the most important question of all, which is, how many times has your house changed this year? Like if I were to visit your house, how many times have you changed your own house? Zero. Wow. That's cool. Because I saw an Instagram post from you a while back. I can't remember when it was, but you said you're often always changing things and...
Not this year.
That's great. That's great. I love that.
Nothing.
This is the year that I kept hearing everyone saying, oh, I'm reorganizing this room because I'm home more. I love that you've gone the other way.
You know why? Because that's true. I was too busy helping everybody else reorganize and redoing their own homes. I think the only thing I did this year was just kind of declutter, but decor wise, it's all been sort of the same. I'm ready for a refresh, but now I'm like itching to move. I want to get closer to the ocean.
Yeah, perfect. Because you're more in central LA, aren't you?
I'm in the valley, so I'm about 30 some minutes to the ocean. But I just want to. The ocean is calling me.
Well, then you might need to sit down and watch The Secret tonight, and tomorrow you'll have the house, no doubt. I don't think you need to watch The Secret again. I think you have it in you.
I know.
Yeah.
I actually have it on my phone. I downloaded the video to my phone. So
that's great.
Listen to it.
That's great. That's awesome.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, do. Well, good luck with manifesting the house and good luck with everything that you're doing. And thank you so much for coming and having a chat with me today.
Thanks so much, Lee.
Yeah, thank you. And to everyone tuning in, you can learn more about Sabrina following the show links. And you also should check out her podcast, Redesigning Life. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Impact the World. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Impact the World. And if you want to go deeper and more in depth with my work, you should check out my members group, The Portal. You can find it at my website, leeharrisenergy.com, or visit theportal.world.